And I hope to join the conversation, this hour. I prepared a few slides, but it's really just kind of a little bit of a background and conversation starter. So I don't want to, there's not too many of them either, but it's really about, understanding what you guys are, here to learn. My background is in user experience. So that's, the bias I bring into this conversation. And I'll give some examples from my world. But I mean, we can go in other directions. So let me just share quick. Let's see. All right. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. So, like Nikki mentioned, I recently made a transition in my career to InsureTech. So I've been for quite a few years working for SAP, who, if you don't know, it's one of the largest enterprise software companies in the world. I decided last year that after 15 years overall, but 10 years at SAP, that I really wanted to make a change. And one of the things in Silicon Valley, you have to keep changing. I think that's probably a theme that you guys discussed. And talking to some friends, and decided that I have to make it. So a little bit about me. I'm Israeli transplant. I grew up in Israel, and I came to Silicon Valley kind of at the late 99, December 99, January 2000, when I got my first job here at the startup. I came fresh out of school at the height of the .com hype, and didn't really know much, but it was an interesting period for me. The startup was acquired by SAP, and that's how I made my way into SAP. Then I left and did another startup in the education space, by the way, and not acquired by SAP, but decided to come back, and here I am again. I'm left SAP after 10 years and to another company, more diving deep into the world of InsureTech. I arrived at UX found me in 2001. My background is in multimedia. So I studied graphic design and applied art, and then my college was in multimedia. And I keep reflecting on this, that sometimes you have to pay attention to the opportunities that you get, the doors, even if not in the common places or not the right shape. But when I studied multimedia, I was really interested in 3D and 3D animation. And I chose my last semester to focus on that. But pretty much in the beginning, I had one professor that I really valued his opinion, and came to me and said, Eliad, if you want to get a job right out of here, go and switch to web. Tell them that you want to switch to learn the web. And I did that. And sure enough, his advice was good. And as soon as I finished school, I had a lot of opportunities. I feel like it's really important for someone to, if somebody help you open the first door. And I had someone here in Silicon Valley in a startup, a founder that opened the door to me and gave me the trust. But it's up on us to pay attention to those opportunities that come to us. And I feel like throughout my career, I made a few good choices, not always, but that really helped me. And I started as a multimedia developer, but after a year or so, when SAP acquired my company, I showed someone what I would do. I was doing a lot of demos and click-throughs for the founder and for sales, kind of concepts. And the guy said, "Oh, you're doing UI design and UX design." And I said, "No, I'm just building demos." And and he said, "Okay, I'm telling you, this is design, and this is what the user experience is all about, and usability." And I feel like finding this field, or I couldn't unsee the things that I saw before. It's pretty much took over my life. I value everything that I buy today, decisions on appliances, on services, on my car. I see the design everywhere, and it's quite lovely and great. But it comes, you keep evaluating things that are around you all the time. I see a lot of job security in the bad design around me. Yeah, so I want to speak a little bit about why user experience matter. Maybe some of the bad things, it can really lead to lost sales. Those big numbers, as you see here, almost $1.5 trillion. This is coming from the banking industry. I can give you guys the references for all those numbers. I did not come up with them. 45% of users give up on if registration is hard. You maybe can reflect on that if you wanted to sign up for a service and just gave up in the middle because it's just too cumbersome, or you got to a dead end. I know I have a few times. Development, 150 billion lost due to waste development time. Projects that are just never finish, get bloated, just left basically in defeat. The projects never finish, never complete. And, or even a small number is $243 or so per customer ticket for bad user experience. So think about the number of times where customers call in, that number can multiplies pretty quickly. On the positive side, maybe the flip side, there's if you have a good experience and a good design, you do see higher sales. I don't think it's a surprise, not to me anyway, like why Amazon is so successful at what they do at their commerce. They just do it so well and so easy, and it's beyond the catalog or the things that you can buy there. It's about the service. Think how fast things come to you, how easy it is for you to track them, knowing exactly where they are, where they come. So that design is end to end, is going beyond the screen that we're on. 60% faster product cycle. So really that early investment in exploration and design really help you actually accelerate the time that it takes to develop something. And there's a research, it's not new now by now, but about how design really helps companies outperform the market. So there was put by the Design Management Institute and kind of shows how good design companies are outperforming the market. I don't know if you have seen this video. I'm gonna try to play it if you guys are willing to see. Oh, I might have to come out of this. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. I'm gonna try. Sorry. Oh. You know what, I will, let's see. Oh. If I can find my Zoom back. Sorry. Oh. I don't know if I want to make sure that you can hear the sound.
I think if you're in presenters mode, it should actually also transmit the audio.
Oh, okay. Let's see. I was looking last night to make sure that the audio will come up. We can try that.
Do you have a YouTube link or something like that?
I'm sorry?
If you have a YouTube URL, I can also pull it up and do
Yeah.
that.
Oh,
Put it in the
awesome.
chat.
Yeah, sorry.
Okay.
I have also prepared it as a YouTube video, just in case.
So you can also share
Maybe
screen with it. Okay, let me pull that and go to screen sharing. Is that you? Sorry. Share. Do you have the screen here? Can you see it?
Yeah, we can see.
Okay, let's go full screen and start.
I can hear though. I don't know.
Can you hear?
No. No, we can't hear it.
No, we cannot hear it.
Does the audio work or not?
No. I think before you share, there's a way to say use computer audio, something like that.
Okay, I'm gonna go back to this. Stop share. Sharing.
It's on the screen where you choose
Your
what you
computer
share.
sound. Here we go. Okay.
Some people are slowing, others are accelerating, a small percentage are backing up, and the rest
Can you hear now?
Yeah.
Okay.
are crashing.
So, we're seeing reports that people don't know what to do at an intersection.
Some people are slowing, others are accelerating, a small percentage are backing up, and the rest are crashing.
So we're looking for signage that makes people want to bring their vehicle to a standstill before they continue.
Essentially a sign that tells people to stop.
Essentially. If you look on page 16 of your brief, you'll notice that about 50% of HVMs are female.
Yeah, HVMs.
Home vehicle managers, but don't neglect the other 50% who are primarily male.
Okay, so we're basically targeting all drivers?
No, we're targeting women, but we're also targeting men secondarily.
But really think this thing through if you could, okay? We're looking for stopping power. Yeah. I mean, and still get it by tomorrow.
I love where you've taken this. You guys nailed it.
Yeah, I think this is pretty spot on. Having said that, we're getting some additional details from upper management since the initial briefing we gave you. I think we have the opportunity to make this piece hit a little harder.
Yeah, harder.
The main message is still the stopping occasion, but we're also going to need to include personal safety cues, any appropriate right-of-way legal, and our partner logos.
And as far as red goes, we love it. But we got word from our creative standard group that the fire department kind of owns red, so we're going to have to lighten it up on the Pantone scale.
Lighten it up like pink?
Based on our female target market, I don't see a downside.
Yeah, well, what about our male secondary market?
Maybe we do pink signs in the female intersection zones and blue ones in the male ones.
And which intersections are the female ones?
I got it. Why don't you go with pink and blue until we get you an answer on that?
Brilliant.
Way to crack the code. I think we're done here.
See is bumping that logo up just a little bit.
Yeah, sure.
We just got word from the UN that we can't use their logo.
Then let's bump up the EPA logo.
Okay.
I think somewhere on there we need to show the stopping occasion.
It needs to be telegraphic.
Yeah, some people just don't read, you know?
It's great. Can we try a new line? I showed it to my daughter and she didn't really get it.
Yeah, circles feel very 90s to me. Can we try a different shape too?
Can we try a softer headline, though?
And a web address, in case people want more info?
Maybe a burst that says new. If it doesn't make it too busy.
I keep imagining a line of cars stacked up at the intersection.
Yeah, I think we need a more complete call to action so people know exactly what to do after the pause.
I'd also like to see maybe some people smiling on it. You know, to remind drivers that stopping isn't required, it's also fun.
You guys got all that? Wow! I'd have to say, I think you finally got it.
You guys did an amazing job of fitting all of our suggestions in on one sign.
Can you throw together a look of success for a sell-in meeting this afternoon?
And that's how it all comes together, guys. I mean, if I were at that intersection, I'd stop.
Me too.
I don't see how anyone couldn't. Let's get these things printed and out the door.
Guys, we're a little disappointed in how this thing is testing, so we've got some minor tweaks we're looking into.
Back to you.
Thank you. So I see some of you smiling. I hope it wasn't too painful. I know for me, we're beyond the smiles, it hits close to home sometimes. Maybe you want to hear from you guys. How did that how did something like this reflect in your life, if at all? Anyone?
My goodness, I totally agree with that. I've been unfortunate enough to have designed or been part of the design team for 300 high schools. My God, the bullshit which you get and the rubbish, and very quickly it moves away from the key objective and into all these. It's exactly like we've got to put the logo on, we've got to do this, got to do the color. For fuck's sake, it's meant to be stop. And I think people get very, very caught up in the minutiae and lose the big picture very quickly.
Yeah, and I feel with design, it's so tangible that it's easy to do, right? There's certain areas, if any of you is more technical, you won't find someone, I mean, if you don't understand it, people don't come to developers and say, hey, can you add that line of code? Or that, you know, it's a lot harder to critique, but with design, we all work with it, we all see it. And I cannot tell you how many times I had people come to me and say, hey, look, I sketched something out. Can you use it? Which is fine, by the way. I want to talk about that as well. Anyone else that's
It just reminds me to the saying, I don't know the road to success, but the road to failure is trying to please everyone. And I'm curious how you deal with it.
Yeah. I will share back.
I mean, I guess the best design doesn't look like it's been designed.
Yeah, we always say it's invisible, right? Yeah. Like you don't have to, you don't see it, you don't think about it. In fact, I've been saying for many years when I do a design review or critique and somebody say, oh, I love that color or the font, sometimes I feel like I failed, actually. I feel like I haven't done a good job if those are the things that people commenting on.
But that means you've got to let go of your ego to some extent.
Yeah, that's another really good point where it's like, it's not, design is not art, although many times we confuse the two things, right? I say, oh, I'm not artistic. I'm not creative. Where creativity and designs, which are really about solving problems, are very different from art. So if I don't know how to draw, if I don't know how to draw a person or a horse or whatever, or a mountain, then I'm not creative. But we can all be creative at our work, at home. There's so many ways that we can show our creativity, which are not artistic necessarily. So I back to how this is really a team sport, and we are serving and depending on a lot of other people. I used to say that as a user experience professional, I'm kind of fostering it. I am in charge of it, but I also, in many ways, I foster it within my company. And it used to raise eyebrows sometimes with people, but the examples I give, performance issues are user experience issues, or customer service issues are user experience issues. I don't have control over this in my work. I can point it out. I can put it as part of my testing and get feedback on, but those are areas where I can point it out and highlight if there are issues, but I don't control those very much. The people that I work with on a regular basis, being a software user experience designer, are of course the product managers, the engineers, subject matter experts, QA engineers that really are kind of at the last end before we test or launch something. There's some, even within design, there's some interesting new roles that are coming out beyond. So traditionally, we used to talk about user experience as being interaction design, visual design, but there are more and more needs for writers, even people that can do motion design. And there's all those new fields that are coming with the new technologies. So the role of a motion designer came about with the tablets, for example, where a lot of the UI started to be more fluid and moving around between, transitioning between screens. Writer is, not a new thing, but there's now this new role of UX writer that is coming about, or a lot more popular these days. Somebody who really pays attention to the language on the screen, right? So it's not really copywriter. It is somebody who, how's the navigation? What are the elements? What are the instructions that we give? Just to make sure that everything, that the tone and the voice are aligned with the company, of course, but also make sense and, try not to take too much space at the same time, give clear instructions to people. Nikki, to your question about how to not serve everyone, I would put a lot of that on good product management, personally. And, I'm happy to hear, what you guys think or your experiences. But for me, a good product manager and company that have strong product management, not just proud and not just say what they do and what they're going to do for the customer, so put the roadmap, but also what they're not going to do. And that's, to me, what really differentiate between the two. So maybe open it up to you guys, and what makes kind of that priority, how do you experience prioritization in your organizations?
I mean, from my experience, there are people who say you can have it that way or not, because they're so convinced that they're right, and very often they're not. Yeah. And very often I see people going with every change suggestion, but they would actually be right to not being open to suggestion because the initial proposal was really good. So it's not like how much you stand for your work is not the same. It doesn't come with the personality of being a good designer necessarily. Either way, it can be both, right? It can be, John Ives was never really about discussing if something is good or not, if he decided that it's good. And it was good most of the time. And the history of how they built Apple Park stands on its own, how he sent everyone away who was not able to fulfill his expectation. just to get it on that level of perfection from engineering and architecture that it is today. So it's tricky because you might have a good person, a person who's good at selling everything, but sometimes the customer is right? And then just selling it turns into the wrong direction because the customer would have been right, or the client would have been right. The customer, the client. Yeah.
I recently had a conversation with a colleague from a small startup, and it's a really hard conversation, like for a product manager, to come together with the VP of sales in front of the CEO, especially for kind of a starting startup, and explain why we are not doing something when this VP of sales say, but my customer is asking for it, is willing to pay for this, even if it's one customer. And you have to be really strong. It's becoming a very tough conversation to explain why not.
Growth hackers have a metric, and if you're curious, you can join that session. We're going to be in that tomorrow, where they turn everything where you have emotions into data, like ideas. I like the idea, I dislike the idea. So they don't accept like or dislike as a decision maker. So they measure every idea against impact, confidence, and ease. Does the idea have an impact on people? Are we confident we can do it? And is it easy to do it? And then they give each of these attributes a number, and the total of the three adds up to something. And then they have a list of ideas. And if it's 100% for each or 100 for each, so the maximum is 300, they don't pursue any idea that's below 280. So they steer away from I like it or I dislike it to does it have an impact? Are we confident that we can do it? And is it easy to be done? And I'm curious how you can take design as something that's very much into I like it, and also design something is very often that you start disliking it and then you grow into it. It's not always something like Marcus said before, to which I fully agree, that good design is something where I feel like, wow, this must have been around forever. Very often good design starts with rejecting it, and you grow into it and you start really liking it.
It's like, so I can reflect on those AirPods that I'm using now, that for a long time I said, oh, why do I need this? I have this cable, the headphones I have are great, they're working fine. And it's one of those products that as soon as I got it, I cannot take it off. Like I'm so hooked on it. When I lose it for a day or so, when I can't find this silly box, I'm so lost right now.
But I think that's something that Apple is good at, putting something into the market we will later find good.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
You mentioned earlier Apple. One of the best books I read probably in the last 5 years was The One Device: The Secret History of the iPhone. And yes, Steve Jobs was a amazing product manager, if you may, and a leader. But actually, if you read that history, they had to hide the idea from him. The people who started this at Apple hide it, and it wasn't an iPhone, by the way. It was just exploring a new way to interact with information. That's how they framed it. It was not about the iPhone. The iPhone came much later. And they had to hide it from him because they were afraid that if he'll see it too soon, he will take it to a completely different direction. And eventually it became his idea and so on. But that's another story. I highly recommend, if you haven't read this book. It's one of the better books I read about developing a product that changed all of our lives, no doubt. So I think Vijay, that maybe you can relate to it. It's really a question that I ask a lot in design, in our design reviews. And one of the things that bugs me the most about is those false insights. So I'll say now, oh, I researched and my users need access to the most important information immediately in an organized manner. That's not an insight, but yet we use it all the time. I mean, what I just said fit to any one of us in any field. It doesn't matter. It's just fact of the day, of what we do today. The data need to be intuitive. Of course it does. Those are not insights. Yet designers use it all the time, and it's, at least on my team, it's driving me crazy when somebody says something like this and use it as an insight. Because how can you act on this? This is not actionable insight. It's not something that I can design based on. Of course, the data need to be intuitive, but what does that mean exactly in my situation? You know, in my world. The methods that I use in design, or designers use, is of course the natural observance, being able to observe how people work, the environment, what they do, what are the artifacts that they surround themselves with, what are the repetitive things that they do over and over. Those are the things that really help me gain insights. An empathy interview, talk to them, kind of hear about the challenges that they have, the things that in their daily work, the interactions that they have in their daily work, what they start the day with, what they do later on, what they don't get to do and would like to do. So having that empathy to their work and be able to talk to them is really helpful for us to gain the insights that we're looking for. And it's much harder now with natural observance. Like, I cannot go to a company and sit there for a day, be a fly on the wall. So those are new challenges that we have in the field right now to gain those insights. But I want to hear from you, maybe, like, how do you gain insights when you come to a new project?
Yeah, so I used to intern at an agricultural agricultural technology startup, and we basically create dashboards for use by farmers. Initially, we just sort of sit in the office and design everything and hope everything works well, or if it works, if we can use it, the farmers will also be able to use it. But then actually getting in on the farm, seeing their activity, seeing how a farmer daily operates everything and how this product ties into their work, helped us understand that a lot of the things that we sort of thought would work don't really work. And so just observing their day-to-day activities helped me understand how specific areas fit into their work.
Great.
I mean, go to where the design is used, as you just said earlier, is difficult, more difficult to do right now, because you just can't be a fly on the wall. You just can't go anywhere and can't sit in the bathroom and watch the children brush their teeth and create the new toothbrush.
Right.
And then there's towards this, how do I mine data today? Do I put my camera in the room and say, hey, okay, I'm going to be your eye on the wall? Because I always felt like asking people doesn't give you the answer you want to hear, right? Asking is the opposite of empathy. Because when you ask people, you're in market research, and market research gives you retrospect wisdom and knowledge, and then the person who's being asked always tries to answer very professionally, that steers away from the concept and the idea. So the observation, the empathy, all these processes from design thinking that we know I love so much, they're pretty cut off. So I'm curious, how are you doing this in this cut off world, in this, we're all on our screens and you don't even know where I am because my background will be the same every day.
Right. Or even change, but it's not your real background, not your real, I look like I'm in the snow by my tent, which, by the way, is a picture from end of May, so not so long ago. But I'm actually in my garage right now, sitting in my garage, and I'm able to hide it. Yeah, it makes it difficult, and I don't have an answer for that. We can definitely do a follow along when somebody do a task on the application. That still happens. All the virtual studies still happen, but it's much harder to do that natural observation of the work environment, and the well, office interaction is all online, but it's a lot harder. It became a lot harder in the last few months. I'll talk about the process, and that's how Guidewire, my current company, describe we did describe the UX process. So going from discovery, which I'll get into, then defining what is exactly the problem that we're trying to solve, what are we solving for, then starting with conceptualize, which would be like small snippets of concepts that we want to put out either to subject matter experts or customers and get feedback on. So just, it's not a full solution, but just get some of the basics idea, those few tasks that are important, and get feedback on them. And then we go into the actual design and build of the application, where a lot of technology consideration, constraints are coming up, or deadlines, or there's many ways that we constrain ourselves to get to the final design or to the final build. I'll talk a little bit about the discovery, which during this phase, we collect the customer data, look at it, do some research, which we just talked about, try to follow along some day in the life, build a map of the tasks they're doing, who they're interacting with, what software they're interacting with. So plot a map, build a persona, kind of after we're talking to a few people, try to build a persona for who are the likely users of that, based on that research. What is their technology understanding level? What are the environment that they're using? What are some of their goals and aspirations? One of the things to cautious that I found around personas, that they become very elastic. I saw so many times where you create a persona, you start to design for that persona, and then somebody comes with another idea. And when you challenge that the persona, it doesn't correspond or doesn't match the persona's needs or aspirations, and they say, well, then the persona is not right. And then you end up changing that persona. So that's a bit of a cautionary tale about personas, that some people and some organizations make them too flexible and elastic. And I'm not saying that you shouldn't challenge some of your early thoughts about who is it for, but if you start to change it every few weeks or a few days because it didn't fit something that somebody wanted, then you maybe need to question the whole thing. Marketing metrics, I definitely want to get insights to what people are looking on our website. I can tell from my work I worked for a company called ideation.com, and I helped build it from the ground up for the first 5 years. And some of the best ideas, the most successful things that we built were built out of understanding the data, what people are searching on, on our website. Looking at the search log and seeing that, 5 out of 10 searches are for science fair ideas. I was like, wow, maybe we need to have a portal or just kind of for science fair ideas. And that became a huge success. So where people were looking for school ratings, that help us build a school rating application for schools in the United States. So understanding the data, when it comes to the enterprise, one of the first things I did when coming to Guidewire is I wanted to talk to the support engineers, to the people that answering the calls, answering the tickets, because that really gives you ideas about what's broken, what's not so clear, and what can be improved. And looking at analogous data, if you think about insurance as risk mitigation industry, finance is the same in many ways, and they're kind of ahead of us in that. So it's also type of risk mitigation, more in finance or risk taking, but in financial, and the financial spin on it. So we're looking a lot at what financial applications are doing, what loan applications are doing when you sign up for mortgage or student loan, and how that process goes. That's a very close industry to us. So fintech and InsureTech are very close together. Any questions so far?
Typically, how many personas would you create?
Ideally, for an application, you have one primary persona and maybe one or two secondary personas.
Right.
Sometimes when you have an application that is there's a collaboration scenario, then you might have two primary personas or more. But I try to satisfy one persona per task, kind of saying this is the persona for this. The other ones are secondary in my consideration.
Got it.
I'm curious in one direction, and that's kind of this question who you're talking to. I don't know how active you decide who should be on the table. And I think that very often we're humble in who we are presenting to. And we're just glad that there's someone listening. And very often we shouldn't talk to a product manager. Sometimes we should have to insist on having a CEO on the table for a conversation if it's a strategic decision.
Right.
Because at the end of the day, the PM goes to the manager goes to the CEO, and then it goes back, and then it's very likely that what the superior thought should be changed doesn't end up being as a feedback in your inbox.
Right.
We know the effect. And I think that talking about like or dislike and the discussion that we had earlier probably can also be somehow adjusted or improved when we're very articulate who we want to have that conversation with on that stage, and not always the same person throughout the whole process on the client side.
Yeah, you remind me. That's something that we have a lot in enterprise between IT and the business, right? So we're building software for business users to use, and many times our interface into that company, into the customers, is IT. They're the one that making the purchase decision. It blurs a lot these days with cloud, of course, but IT is still the one, at least in insurance world, that are deciding, and they would sometimes, they're subject matter experts or people that used to do the jobs, used to be in the business, and then switch to IT, and they would say, yeah, don't worry, I don't bother the business. I will tell you everything you need to know. So they're becoming that proxy, and having a strong voice and be able to say, I appreciate it, I would like to hear from you too, but I want to talk directly to the business, I cannot emphasize how important that is, at least in my world. So many times the information you get is either not complete from the proxy, or sometimes it's wrong. I mean, what they remember or how they remember this have changed maybe in the last few years. So being very adamant and insisting on talking directly to the users is important. And at the end of the day, also appreciated by the business. My best experiences is when I ask that and IT and the business meet together. And Nikki, I think, this is a story in the App House that we used to talk about a lot, where we would insist on IT and business sitting together and working together in those workshops. and they would say, we have never talked before. We have never met before. So being that bridge was very satisfying. Being that person, you come all the way from wherever, another state or another country here, and you haven't worked that closely before, was so rewarding. And I always talked about that. Yeah, the IT need to get empathy to the business, but you also see the other way happens, where the business gain empathy to what IT is trying to do for them as well. So the empathy goes both ways, actually. Yep. So I know I showed this really nice slide of a design process, and nicely designed, nicely manicured, but that's my reality. That's how I feel my reality, where, in the beginning it's just all fuzzy and no idea how to make sense of all the data points that I'm getting, and all the different personas, and as we go through the process, things start to get clarified, and the constraints are coming, which also helps a lot to clarify things, what we do and what we don't do, and the testing, the concept testing, and prototyping, when we put them in front of users, that's definitely puts it out to the where are we going with this. So I feel like this is much more true picture of the design process that we have. And that's actually my last slide. You might have seen that quote before, or know that quote. But the 21st century illiteracy is not reading and writing, but people who cannot learn, unlearn, and relearn. And that's something that I want to leave you with, and really think about. What are the things that you need to unlearn? What are the things, and I'll share with you what I, the biggest thing that I have had to unlearn and still, working on. What about your team and your company? What are the things that you would like them to unlearn? How can you foster that? How can you foster that change in your company? One of the things that throughout the years that as a designer and a design researcher that I had to unlearn is how to ask leading questions, or not to ask leading questions. It is so easy for me to ask a question and then start to give the solutions. And it's so wrong. It is so wrong. Like, I need to ask the question and shut up and let the person answer. Think about it and answer it. And now that I said this, I ask you to pay attention to people on the radio, or interviewers, reporters, because they do it all the time. They ask a question and they start to give the answer for the person all the time. So that's one of the things that before I ask a question, especially in research, I tell myself, ask the question and shut up. And I try to remind myself that all the time.
I love that quote. By the way, it's actually also a beautiful invitation, and you have to look closely to see it that way. But once you see it that way, it makes a lot of sense. And that's to make the same mistake more than once. Mm-hmm. Right? It's the opposite of learn from your mistakes, because if you make the same mistake twice, it might make sense all of a sudden, because you just alter a little thing, or you try it out in a different way. Didn't work yesterday doesn't mean it's not going to work tomorrow, because everything is changing.
Yeah. Or a small tweak to it, right? I mean, if you can make the small tweak, maybe we see it a lot. We keep going back to Apple, but Apple doesn't come up necessarily with all the first to market with things, but sometimes they take it and just make a small change or big change, and there's a leading product. Wow.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Maybe. Yeah.
I liked it. It's kind of a very warm philosophical journey last hour. I enjoyed it. how you guys think about it. Marcus?
Oh, that's really good. Really interesting. Really interesting. A beautiful way of describing the process. I'm still a little bit hooked on that bloody video, I'm afraid. Because I can just see it everywhere.
It's our life.
Yeah, sorry about that.
No, it's okay. It's okay. Any thoughts from you about things maybe you want to unlearn?
For me, the toughest thing to unlearn was the idea of truth per se. And I read a book from Heinz von Förster, and I don't know if it's been translated to English or any other language. The German title is Die Wahrheit ist eine Erfindung eines Lügners, which would literally translate to English, the truth is an invention of a liar. And it basically opens up to the concept that it's just temporary. So when you look into the sky and you see a plane flying in the sky, it doesn't mean that planes are flying. It just means right now over your head, this plane is flying. And if you take this as a metaphor, it's very easy to let go of things that are so important for you because you think they're true. That was for me the hardest, because I thought that truth is something that's important. But it's so individual.
I reflect on this because I feel like this last 6 months working from home and experience, and I don't want to, it's not politics or anything, but like it made me realize how I question everything that I read, everything that I see, what I believe, or what, you know, it's just about the virus, about the world, about it became so prominent to me, like, because there was so much information and misinformation and disinformation, and it was just unbelievable. It just made me really frustrated, honestly. That's how hard it is for me to read something and say, okay, I believe this is truth.
So it's kind of also an invitation. You've been there yesterday, most of you, and now we're having this conversation together with Eliad, and also Michaela has joined us. What would you make how many different decisions would you make if it wouldn't matter, right? If it wouldn't matter if it's true or not, what decision would you make? Like COVID. If it wouldn't matter if it's true or wrong, what decisions would you make? The press says that you can go on the street without a mask. Would you still go on a mask? Or whatever. Just would you make a different decision, right?
If it didn't matter.
If it didn't matter if it's true or wrong, what they're saying, what you're hearing, what you're reading. Because it's never true and it's never wrong, right? You just don't know if it's 100% true, 100% wrong. It's somewhere, there's like this lever, it's somewhere in between. Kind of, that would be that would be something that I really like to see with every piece of information, this level of accuracy. How close does this get to reality? And it's probably never 100, and it's probably never 0. But it gives you a feeling of how important is it actually. And then the same information, how much does it change over the week, over a period of a week? What was true yesterday, is it still true today? So, and if you see so many truths changing to wrong, or so many wrongs changing to true, it seems to be not so important. So what else would you do if that wouldn't be so important? We're going to have John Gray joining us. The session starts in a minute. Eliad, if you want, you can join us. I want just to cut this here. Thank you so much for the session. It was really nice.
Guys.
There's a recording. I'm going to share the recording with you, and you'll be connected to everyone in the room, so you can take it from there. Whether there is something that you want to explore together, totally up to you. It's just the change of the other session. John will be joining us, I guess, pretty soon. I hope he can make it and he should actually be already here. So I hope technology doesn't stand in our way.
Thank you, Eliad. It's great.
Yeah, thank you. It was
a
pleasure to meet you all. Yeah, appreciate the opportunity, Nikki. And I have to do a performance review. So my company, this is actually our fiscal year has ended. So I'm doing performance reviews. So I'm going to go and prepare for my review.
Are you being reviewed? Are you being reviewed or reviewing?
I'm reviewing my team. So I have 4 people working on my team, and I'm giving their reviews right now.
Oh, how long are you going to take doing that?
I'm doing 45 minutes per person, but I spend about an hour and a half before that to prepare for each one.
So it's the rest of the day.
3 today. I did 1 yesterday. So yeah, long day. Thank you.
Enjoy. Thank you.
Have a great day.
Bye.